Hi, Gringo012345 here, and I thought we'd take a look at your game. And in fact, Gringo, as far as I can discern, you played very well. It's only later on in the middle game that there was some tactics, and it's usual for people of our strength that when tactics ensue, that our position sometimes suffers, and we have irreparable damage, and it's very, very difficult to come back from a position like that. But the game was in fact very interesting, I felt, and there are some key points that we'll have a look at. Now, your opponent opened with the move d4, and you responded with knight to f6. Now, the reason we play knight to f6 is not only does it develop the least active piece, the knight, but it prevents white from establishing two adjacent pawns in the centre. Now, we know the reasons for this. It's because this affords him more space in the centre and more mobility for his pieces. And what usually happens is, because we prevent e4, white is usually forced to play e3, and in order to get 2 pawns in the centre, to play c4 instead of e4. It's a kind of compromise that he makes. Okay, he cannot get these 2 central pawns, he'll therefore settle for these 2 central pawns. Now, after this, your opponent concealed his ideas and his plans with the flexible knight to f3. We still don't know if he's going to play c4. We don't know if he's going to develop his bishop and then lock the pawn chain. We don't know if he's going to fianchetto his own bishop. We really don't know. It's a very flexible choice for white. He could of course play some system like this with e3 and a Coley setup. We simply don't know what he's going to do. And it's a very good idea because we don't want to be too committal, and we want to be flexible ourselves. And the move that you played I really liked, g6. If there's one criticism of this move, is that it's a little committal. We don't really know what white is going to do, and we are telling him, okay, we're going to fianchetto our kingside bishop. Regardless of what you do, we're going to fianchetto our kingside bishop. Of course, it's a good move, and I'll show you why it's a good move. Now that we have prevented e4, it's very likely that white will play e3, and he'll try and put his bishop here on perhaps d3. But what this move does is it blunts this bishop and makes it certainly ineffective on d3. But of course we don't know if white is going to put his bishop on d3 yet. That's why I'm saying it's just a little committal, but it's a good move. It's a great move, and I play it myself. So you played, of course, g6 in this position, and your opponent played a move here I don't like. He played knight to c3, and his idea is, of course, is to force through the move e4, gaining these 2 pawns in the centre, diagonals of course for his bishops, and he'll have a very easy game of it. The problem with this move, e4, is that he simply cannot enforce it. all we need to do is stop his dreams, and we can do this with the move d5. You can never force through e4 now. He'll just lose a pawn. And this move d5 effectively stops his plans, and now he's forced to find another plan. And the problem for him is that he cannot establish two pawns in the centre anytime soon. His knight here on c3 is blocking the c pawn. We have stopped his plan of playing e4 anytime soon, and he therefore needs to find some other plan. So this is why I don't like this move, c3. And in the game you played bishop to g7, which normally would be a very good move, and is a good move. But the problem is it doesn't take into consideration white's plans, which we know of course is to play e4. So therefore, in this position here, I think a better move would have been d5, stopping white's plans and forcing him to do something else. But anyway, move bishop g7 is not a bad move, and this was what in fact was played. And of course after this it allowed your opponent to carry out his plan of playing a quick e4, having these two beautiful pawns in the centre. Now of course after this you played d6 to prevent e5 and this e pawn hassling your knight. And of course you have ideas of playing either e5 or c5 yourself, challenging the white centre. Your opponent replied with bishop to e3, and of course his idea is to play queen d2 to castle, to play the bishop to h6, exchange off your dark squared bishop and storm your castle position with a pawn storm on your king side. This is his idea. And of course you brought your king to safety. Again, it's a very good move, and he tried to carry out his plan with queen to d2. And here you played what I thought was a brilliant move, an excellent move. Knight to g4. Oops, we're missing a pawn. Let me just put a pawn here. Knight to g4. Now why is this a brilliant move? Well, it stops your opponent carrying out his plans. You can no longer... Let me just put these pawns back. Yeah, this is the position here. You can no longer play bishop here to h6. You simply chop that bishop off the board, and although it neglects the development of your pieces, these pieces here in the queen side, it is an exception to the rule of development because it stops your opponent's plans. He has no longer any dreams of bishop to h6, of swapping off your dark square bishop and pawn storming your king position. These dreams are over for him. But that, of course, did not deter him from trying out his plan anyhow. And he played the move, of course, h4, trying to carry out his plans irregardless of your own position. Of course, the knight didn't come to g4 for no reason, and you chop his bishop with knight takes e3, and he recaptures with the queen. Now this is an interesting moment. In some of the videos in the English opening we covered positions like this with attacks up the h-file, and of course it creates some type of initiative. The idea is of course to play h5 and create some weakness against your fianchettoed position. The problem with it is of course is that it creates a weak square on g4, and this is a perfect place for a minor piece, especially this queen's bishop here on c8. If ever it finds itself on g4, it will exert pressure against white's position, which is very good for us. Now, the move that you played I think was a great move as well, because it stops, once again, stops white's plans. You played h5. Okay, it creates a weakness here on g5, but it stops his plans dead in their tracks. It will be much more difficult for him to attempt to open the h-file. And after this move, he of course castled. And here is an interesting point. White has a lead in development. He's castled. He has 1, 2, 3 pieces developed, whereas we have only one. All our queenside pieces are still undeveloped. And the move that was played was c6, and I can understand the logic behind this move. Sorry, that pawn was on d4, and I can understand the logic behind this move. You of course want to prevent access into your territory by taking control of the d5 square. However, it would perhaps have been better to develop a piece. You could maybe consider a move like bishop to g4, threatening to swap off this knight here on f3, which would of course increase our control of these dark squares. Maybe in conjunction with a move like knight to d7, and preparing either e5 or c5, challenging the centre. And the problem with the move c6 is that it blocks the knight's natural square of development, and it doesn't really challenge the centre. It's a solid move, but a somewhat passive move. And after this, your opponent played bishop to e2, and you took the opportunity to develop your queen here, getting out of the way of this bishop. Oh, sorry, this rook here on d1. I like this move myself. It anticipates an opening up of the position. It's a good instinctive move. I like it. Now of course your opponent is better developed, and therefore is going to try to open up the position and take advantage of his lead in development, and he did so with the move e5. You took, and although it gives white greater mobility for his pieces, he's now able to bring this knight into his camp. I think it was a good move myself. but it presents some little problem for us. We have a very active knight in our territory. It's on our side of the board, and it doesn't belong on our side of the board. It is up to no good in our side of the board, and we need to challenge it or neutralize it somehow. And there is essentially two ways we can do this. We can try to undermine its support with a move like c5, or we can challenge it directly with a move like knight to d7. And I think this latter option is the better. We have a very active knight, on e5. And if we can challenge it with a piece that is essentially passive, this bishop on b8 coming to d7, and exchange a swap, then it will be really good for us, because we'll have exchanged a passive piece for a very active piece. Now, the move that you played was bishop to e6, and once again I can understand the logic of this move. You want to develop your bishop before you develop the knight. Otherwise you think that perhaps your bishop might be blocked in there. So I understand the logic of this move. However, the move is tactically suspect. Let me show you why. After bishop to e6, white has this move here. Knight takes g6. And of course, if we recapture, he recaptures with tempo, and this queen is infiltrating our position, and we're going to be in some trouble. So although it looks good, we are developing a piece prior to developing our knight. We always want to try and look out for these unexpected tactics, like a discovered attack against this bishop. And as I've stated, I think a better choice would have been to immediately neutralize this knight in our territory, with threatening to swap it off with knight to d7. And of course, once the knight retreats, we can of course prepare a move like e5, opening up the position, opening up the diagonal for our bishop. Of course he takes, and of course the position is very safe for us. It might even in fact be better for us. We have two bishops in a fairly open position, and we're doing really great. But anyhow, let us get back to the game. Okay, the move that was played was bishop to e6. And here your opponent played f3. Of course, his idea is to play g4 and pawn storm your kingside position. And here he played knight b to d7, of course challenging this knight in the centre, and the knight retreated of course to d3. And here of course you try to get your counterplaying going with the move b5, and I think this is in fact the right idea. Trying to gain counterplay against the enemy king. It's usual in positions like this, where there is of course opposite side castling, that The player who wins, of course, the race is generally the player who wins the game. And that's in fact what it is. It's a race. And here your opponent carried out his plans to pawnstorm your kingside with the move g4. And you played queen to b6. Of course, again, I can understand the logic of this move. This is defended only once now and attacked twice, and it therefore makes perfect sense to attack it again with a second piece with queen to b6. The problem, of course, is that it can be defended by white with the move that he played, knight to f4, and he essentially reverses the role, because now your bishop is attacked twice and defended only once, and it is somewhat difficult in fact to defend it. If I can just go back for a moment, perhaps a better move than queen to b6 would have been knight to b6, with the idea of utilising this beautiful outpost here with knight to c4, putting pressure on white's position. And of course white can try to stop it with a move like b3, but this just provides an excellent target for our own pawn storm. And of course we're going to play moves like a4 and of course have our own attack against the enemy king. But anyhow, the move that was played in the game was again queen to b6. I can understand the logic of this. And your opponent played knight to f4, hitting this bishop for a second time. And of course you react naturally. You try to counter-attack with the move b4. The problem with this is, of course, is that after this capture and recapture, white gains a tempo by checking the king. Now the move that was played was knight to a4, gaining a tempo on the queen. Queen went to a5, and here white realised his tactical idea with knight takes e6. Now, it might have been better simply to try to calculate this out. Okay, I'm down a bishop, but I can even it up. It's now a bishop for a knight. And okay, I'm going to lose the exchange with something like this, but and okay, we've lost the exchange and we simply accept this fact, but we're still in the game. But the continuation that actually happened with pawn takes e6 and queen takes e6, we're going to lose not just the exchange but an entire piece. And if my memory serves me correctly, you blocked this with rook to f7, bishop to c4 was played. Of course we need to try and protect this rook, and of course white has won a piece. And even if we take this piece back, white can still win the exchange, and he has lots of threats, and it's very, very difficult to come back from this type of position. But of course that was just due to a tactical oversight, and these things happen. Of course, failing to recognise that this is attacked twice and defended only once. So I'm going to stop the analysis there. I did think you played up until this point very well, Gringo. You attacked on the queen side where you were supposed to attack. And if we go back and look for some key moments, rather than bishop g7, of course we could have prevented white's entire plan with a move like d5. This move in fact does prevent white's plans. It's a very good move. And here we have this kind of attack down the h file. We of course recognise that it weakens the g4 square. And rather than this move c6, we could of course have utilised this square with a move like bishop to g4, threatening of course to exchange this knight here, giving us good control of these dark squares in the centre. And here is this knight. It should immediately be neutralised. It does not belong in our territory. It has no future in our territory, and it's only up to no good in our territory, and it of course must be evicted or neutralised. And this is the right idea, it just comes some too late. And here's the tactical shot, which essentially decides the game. So thank you, Gringo, very, very much for sending me this game. You should take some heart from this game because we've learned something from this game, and that is always important when we're studying losses. It's the chess philosophy that we have. Okay, we win and we feel good, but we in fact learn more from our losses. And if you have any other games, then feel free to send them. It's been a pleasure looking at this game and trying to offer some little advice from my own experience. So thanks once again, and give my regards to you and your family. So take care, and bye bye for now.